Welcome back, everybody, to this week's episode of Maximum Octane. As always, I am super excited about my guest, Mr. Chuck Lafferty. He is the bomb diggity. I don't know how else to describe him. He's one of those people that, walks the walk and doesn't just talk the talk. And he puts his money where his mouth is. And one of the things that is wonderful about Chuck is you never have to worry about what he's doing when nobody's looking, because he probably has stronger expectations for himself than are laid out to anybody else. So, Chuck, welcome this week. How are you?
Thank you. I'm well. Thanks for having me. Thank you for the compliments. You've filled my ego up to ginormous levels. So thank you. Thank you.
Well, since this is going on YouTube now, we can kind of talk about your background a little bit there. And you have the Fighting Irishship there, Notre Dame, and I
Yes.
was mentioning too before we went on air, Rudy has to be one of the best movies of all time. And I don't know how many years ago did that movie come out?
Oh, I think I was still in high school. So I think 15, 20 years ago, it came out.
Oh, it's older. It's older than that was out before I had kids. So I think that's got to be like Thursday. As a matter of fact, I'm going to look it up. But there is not a time that I can watch Rudy where I don't have ugly crying with snot running down my face. And
Yep.
there's just no not ugly crying in Rudy. And if you can watch Rudy without ugly crying, you are a monster. That's all I'm going to say about that.
It's
That's all
about
I
like watching Old Yeller.
yeah. Chuck, do you want to share with our listeners a little bit about your life experience and your leadership things? Because today we're going to talk about developing your people, but why should people care what you have to say?
I started in the industry when things were a little bit simpler. 1999, 1998 is when August of 98 is when I first got into the business that I stayed in for 20 plus years. Prior to that, I was in the dealership world a little bit, but I worked my way from the bottom all the way to the top of an organization. And I learned throughout the ways and through the stages that I went that the people that invested in me and the people that taught me and coached me and really embraced me were the most important people of my life. They not only taught me work skills, but they taught me life skills as well. And when I got to the top of the industry where I was at, or the company that I was at, I remembered that. I didn't forget that because it was so important of who I had become. And it didn't really change who I was, but it changed how I thought I was, if that makes any sense.
It
It
makes
was just
sense to me, but do you want to explain that to our listeners? What's the difference? Because they're going to be like, okay, they're just crazy right now, whatever they're saying.
Well, the people that changed me changed my way of thinking, how I processed things, how I looked at things and looked at people. I didn't look at people from a first impression. I got to know that person and before I made any sort of impression. And it's the same thing with a problem. I don't try to solve the problem off of a whim. I look at a problem, I dissect the problem, and it's the same thing I did in my business is I never made harsh and fast decisions. Always wanted to take my time and dissect it. And there again, I'm an analytical person, so it was easier for me to do that. Yes, I struggled with making decisions on the fly, and I still did it, but I always second guessed myself, if that makes sense.
It sure does. It sure does. And we try to discourage a lot of people from making decisions on the fly because they don't have all the information they need. And
Yep.
that's where I think there's always been the biggest disconnect in leadership and what it means to be a leader and how do you perform those duties of there's so many people that are not prepared for whatever task at hand or whatever the day is going to bring or the week or the month or the year. And so they're so reactionary. And when you're reactionary, that deals in emotion and not analytics. And so many times in the heat of the moment, we don't always make the best decision. I was listening to the song Meatloaf or this weekend, Paradise by the Dashboard Light. And, that's been a staple for years. But, really at the end of the day, he kind of made a promise he couldn't keep. He was in the motion, he was in the middle of things, and he's like, and acted and was reactionary and out of emotion. And then he regretted what he said. And so many times in leadership, we say things that we can't back up, and we're not going to back up, like that when we snap to judgment, or somebody comes in late and it's like your best person and you're like, if you come in late one more time, you're out of here. Then they come in late again and they don't fire them because they're their best person, right? So you can't say things that you're not ready to back up. And if we were better prepared, we could do that.
Yeah, and I think I'm not alone when I say this, that I have said things in my career that were out of emotion. And as soon as I said it, I regretted it. So I've always adapted having that speed bump. And it was a speed bump from the brain to the mouth to always slow it down.
I need one of those.
Yeah, so that's what I adapted as a leader. And when I did that, when I had that speed bump and I was able to really think before I spoke, it not only helped my leadership ability, it helped the morale and the culture that I was developing with inside my organization and inside my walls, because everybody knew, hey, Chuck's going to give you an honest answer. You may not like it, but it's not going to be derogatory. It's not going to be ugly. It's going to be the truth, but it's going to be professionally based. And that's one thing that I've prided myself in, is making sure I had that speed bump between my brain and my mouth.
Do they make double speed bumps? I need a double speed bump. I might even need a triple one, I think, sometimes.
I've needed those as well.
So when you talk about developing people, here's what I hear, Chuck, from people. I don't even have time. We can't take care of the customers we have. We can't take care of all that stuff. I don't have time to develop people. I don't have time right now. We'll worry about that next year. What do you say to those people?
You're missing the boat. You're leaving a lot of money on the table. You have to invest in your business, and investing in your business is, marketing. Investing in your business is how it looked, but more importantly, how it operates. And when you really dissect it and pull the layers back of the onion of how it operates, those are not what you're doing. It's what your employees are doing. And you're only as good as your people. So if you don't invest, you don't train, you don't challenge mentally, for them to do things outside their comfort zone. And I know that oh so well, doing things outside my comfort zone. There's a lot of things I've done outside of my comfort zone. But that's what makes us better. That's what makes us a growing person every day. And I think George Zeke said it. Nobody's getting out alive, right? We're all going to die. And that was the greatest line I ever heard, because it made sense. Why am I wasting my days and my minutes and my seconds worrying about what I can't control? What I can control is me. What I can control is what I do to help other people. That's what I can control. And that was my philosophy in business, was I'm going to control what I can control. And what I can control is developing of my people. And I challenged them. I didn't have a 100% success rate. As much as I wanted it, I didn't have it. I had about a 70% success rate. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. But the one thing that did, that 70% that did succeed, they were phenomenal. They were phenomenal people. They were phenomenal employees, and they gave back to the business and gave back to the community.
That's so awesome. And I did look up the Rudy thing while we were talking. It came out in 1993. So it's October of 1993. So this month it is 29 years old. So
wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
If you have not watched Rudy, if there's anyone out there listening that hasn't watched Rudy, or you haven't watched in a while, you need to. So circling back to developing your people, I think sometimes, again, there's that disconnect. I don't have time. So if somebody's 3 weeks out of whatever they do, whether they're in the automotive industry, they make widgets, they do coaching, whatever it is that they do, if they're 3 weeks behind, how do they pull people out of production or where they're needed to do that? And why is that so important?
Yeah, sometimes I think you have to put production second and put development first. And the reason I'm saying that is you're going when you pull people out of production, you're going to miss X amount of time. That's a given. But what you're not thinking of is you're pulling this person out of production to be developed and be a better person. That's going to give you 5, 10 years of great production. You're going to be able to make that production up down the road. It's important for your business. It's important for your culture. And I was listening to a video the other day of a guy that said most leaders confuse a leader as a from a servant to a subservient. He said, I had that small belief that I was subservient to my employees. I served my employees, I served their every need. And it was such a mistake to believe that because my employees work for me. I write their check. But the meaning of being a servant to your employees is exactly that, developing their needs and their skills to become a better person. I'm serving my employees and I'm setting them up for success in the future.
What about sometimes when I have conversations with business owners, they say, oh, our employee Chuck, he's at the top of his game. He doesn't need any more training. He's the best, whatever we've ever had. So they feel like they don't have to develop Chuck and that there isn't anything they can do to develop him because he's already so amazing.
Yeah, actually, Kim, I'm glad you said that because I actually ran into that problem. I took all the leadership classes available. I took everything available, but I did find some things that I could be better at. Communication, speaking, public speaking, things that you wouldn't think this person would be into, you'd be surprised. And I explored every option of leadership. I went to a leadership school at the University of Notre Dame because I'm a Notre Dame fan, so I had to choose
Go
Notre Dame.
figure. I'm
Yeah,
shocked.
right. But it was the hardest 6 weeks of my life because I had to get outside my comfort zone. They were teaching me things that I had no idea I didn't know. And I became a better leader after that because I took the chance on myself. And my owner, my boss took the chance in giving me that opportunity, saying, hey, take a couple hours a day and work on your training that you're doing through the University of Notre Dame. And that was a game changer for me because they're investing back into me. It's important that you take the time and continuously develop that employee from the point they start with you to the point that they leave you or retire. Hopefully retire with you. But you have to continually develop that person, every aspect of them, not just their mechanical knowledge, but their leadership knowledge, their communication knowledge.
I am so happy you just said that last part because many of our conversations we have, people look at if somebody is not currently a manager or, going to be a manager in 6 months, they don't want to invest in any kind of leadership training because they're not going to be quote unquote a professional manager, whatever. And it always shocks me because wouldn't you love everyone in your company, including yourself, to behave in a manner that a true leader does and a mentor? And I don't understand how we get so short-sighted sometimes with that. That's not a skill that this person needs in that job. And it's like everyone can use leadership skills. Everybody could be developed to be different. How important is it for you to ask the employees, the internal customers, as I like to call them, what kind of things they want to be developed and learn about?
Well, I think it's important. I mean, those are the things you start with, right? Because they're passionate about it. And if they're passionate about it, they're going to complete it. They're going to give 110%, whatever you want to call it, 101, 102, whatever it is, they're going to give that percentage. And if they're passionate about it, they're going to live it, they're going to learn it, and they're going to practice it. And I think that the challenge that I had later in my career was getting people who were not passionate about something to become passionate about it. And that's where you have to be a good salesman, I guess. You have to really drive that home to them that, hey, look, this was important and you were passionate about it, but, and excuse my French, but this is more important. And you have to share that with them.
The why. You always got to circle back to the why, right? I
Yep.
think that's
Yep.
another thing. And when we're developing our people and giving them training, sometimes on their end, it just is perceived as either one, you don't trust their current abilities, or two, you're checking boxes and they don't understand the why behind it. They don't understand the big picture because we don't take the time to explain to them. This is why this development and training is important. This is how much you mean to the company. This is where we'd like to see you in whatever years, and ask them where would they like to be and what do they want to have training for. And we kind of just jump over some of those steps, I think, sometimes. And it's like, oh, then, they are literally rolling their eyes going, oh, I got to go to training tonight. I got to go. And I think also sometimes we don't do a good job in vetting the training. And there's so many times somebody goes for some kind of training and they come back and they say, it's not anything like I thought it would be, or it basically was a commercial for some type of equipment or software or something the whole time, and I didn't get anything out of it. And once they go to a few of those, that is not what the expectation was. It's really hard to kind of get them to go forward, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And you have to take that dreaded four-lettered word out of the whole description, work. Okay, this is not work. Okay, this is your development. You have to paint them a picture of how this comes together for them at the end of the road. So let's say I'm putting a person through management training, and I have to paint that picture to them that, hey, look, you're going to take some training, and it's fun. It's going to develop your future. It's going to develop what you're doing. It's going to be able to allow you to communicate more efficiently and more properly to the employees, and to the customers. And paint that picture to them and really have them understand why they're doing it. And again, we go back to the why. There's always a why in everything that we do. Why you're doing it, why is this going to matter to me later on down the road? And it's important that we communicate and paint that picture.
When you're developing your people, I think sometimes there's also another disconnect of there's not a true career path set out for most small companies and entrepreneurs. They're very busy being busy and doing their thing and getting their company off the ground and all of that. And when they're onboarding people, I mean, most people have a very basic onboarding process, if they even have that.
Yeah.
And there's not a career path set out right from the beginning to say, here's where you could be if you so desire. And so right from day one, we're going to be training you to get you to this position, 10 or whatever positions later, or 5 or 3 or whatever it is takes to get there. And so we're going to do this together. We're going to learn this together. We're going to grow together. We're going to grow this company together, and so on and so forth. And we leave that out. We leave that out a lot. And we just hope that they understand that our vision for them, that they, through osmosis or something, know what it is too.
Yeah, and that's where a lot of businesses, a lot of people fail. They fail right out of the gate. Is they hire this great person, they interview them, and they go through the whole process. They come in, they're 10, 15 minutes early. They sign all their paperwork, and they say, "There you go." And you're not setting that person up for success. And when you start looking at the churn rate of certain businesses that have that revolving door, and you really, as an owner, you really need to step back and look at that, because is the problem your hiring process? Is the problem you? The way you're onboarding people, the way you're doing tour shops, going around the shop and introducing this new employee to each individual person and give them a highlight about each individual person so they feel welcomed on day one. And then having regular checkups. We talk about one-on-ones all the time, but those are important because again, that door is always open. There's never a closed door. You're always communicating, and especially with a new employee, it's vital.
And the weekly one-on-ones are a perfect spot to plug in some of your development and training of your people, right? In those
Yep,
areas.
absolutely. Feedback is important. Being, having that clear window to look through. A lot of new employees view the owner as sitting up in an office, looking out the window at his enterprise, and I'm the little minion that's doing the work. But we have to change that. We have to change that image of how people view owners. And there's a lot of great ones out there that are doing just that. They're changing that. They're communicating, they're talking, they're sharing their vision with every employee of what they want their business to be. And when you do that, you start cultivating a great culture. And then people are proud and happy to be working for you. And pretty soon, what do you have? You have people calling you going, "Hey, are you hiring?" I'm full. I'm filled up now, you know, but those are great problems to have.
Those are great problems to have. How often do you see, because I know I run across it a lot when we're trying to put together a development program for small businesses and they didn't start out right with the onboarding. So you're trying to work backwards and get all in. But a lot of times the employees themselves don't have the confidence or don't think they can be a leader, or they don't think they can be whatever because no one ever told them they can. No one ever, built them up and let them know that how much potential they have. And how often did you run across that?
Quite a bit, actually. And, I think my job was to build people up and to show them that they have the capabilities that, the natural born leadership ability, the courage to lead. And, it was tough. And it was tougher as I started getting older, to share that. But I think my part of giving back to each person, and then 10 years down the road, whether they worked for me or they went somewhere else, they always checked in and said, "Hey, I'm now the manager of 150 employees, and hey, great, congratulations. What did you practice? What did you learn from that?" And they always tell me it was the things that I said to them to build them up, to actually have them realize that they are a leader. Because I think deep inside of us, there's leadership capabilities in every one of us, whether we want to admit it or not. It's, do we put it out there, and do we practice it and have that courage to practice it and speak it?
Well, as you know, a lot of people don't want to practice anything. They take a class or they've been doing it for a long time, and that makes them all of a sudden a de facto expert, which probably is one of my, I don't know if it's a pet peeve, but drives me the most crazy is whenever we talk to somebody and they hire someone and they're like, this person's really great, really great. So what data do you have to support that? Oh, they've been doing this for 20 years, whatever the amount is, 30 years, 10 years. That doesn't mean they're doing it great. That doesn't mean they've been doing a good job at it. And sometimes that's almost worse because when somebody's been doing something for 20 years and they think they're an expert and that they can teach the class. How many times do you hear that? I could teach
Yeah.
that class. And they're not willing to learn. They're not willing to be developed. They're not looking to hone their skills, right? And so we always laugh because I sing horribly, and I think I've probably shared this before, but I have many talents, and singing is not one of them. But I've been singing for 50 years now, so by the fact, I should be an expert singer, right? I should be able to sing opera or whatever, I'm sure, because I've been doing it for so long, right?
Yeah, but I mean, when you think of it, so let's say you hire somebody that's been doing it for 30 years, and whether it's singing, okay? You hire somebody that you've been singing for 50, but they've been singing 30. They can teach you something, but maybe you can teach them something too.
I can teach
So,
them how not to sing.
there you go. Always have an open mind.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And that's, the biggest picture. Everybody can learn, everybody can hone their skills. And even the best of whatever, if they don't pay attention to it, there's little things you forget. There's
Hmm.
things you forget to mention or little things you forget to do. And it's so sad to me when people get to a point where they're like, I know everything. I can't. So how do you develop those people? How do you go to your person that's been doing whatever for 20 years? They think they are hands down the best in the entire universe. They could teach every class there is. How do you approach them about, hey, I want to work on developing you?
Yeah, those are the ones that are closed off. Those are probably the most difficult ones. I call those the rock people because their head as hard as a rock is they don't want to listen. So one of the practices that I did was I actually started training by committee, where I would take my top three employees that I had and I would say, okay, you're going to train this person. And it seemed like it came better from them than it did from me. The person seemed to be more open-minded about it when it came from somebody else more their equal than it did from me. And I would always be the person behind the scenes watching this whole development go on, and I would communicate with my technicians, "Hey, we need to work on this with this new guy," and they would go and they would approach it, and they would approach it in a way that was acceptable to me. And every now and then I had to intervene and really drive home the message. But for the most part, I let my people train the people. It's their show. It's my reputation, my business, but it's their show. And they took pride in it. And when they had that little bit of piece of ownership on training and developing, they ran with it. And that was where I was the most successful is when they took the ownership from me.
Do you feel like having peers do it help the rock people be more open?
Absolutely. Absolutely. They let the guard down around them versus when it was from me. My wife tells me I'm a very intimidating force when I'm in the locations, but I don't see it. They let their guard down because they spend 10, 12 hours a day with them. They felt comfortable with them versus with me. Yeah, it was a very successful having the trust in the people below me to work and to develop the new people. Really, really made strides for our business.
So, what are some of the other things that you can work if you want to help develop your people? Obviously, leadership is one, whatever technical skills for the actual position that they're currently doing. What other ideas do you have for
Oh,
development?
I'm passionate about customer service. And when I say customer service, I'm saying when you go and talk to a customer, use proper English, right? Because that's an image that they're representing the company, they're representing me. I want them to go in there and properly pronounce things. And we had a rule: we don't say ain't and we don't say nah. And those were just the things that we used and practiced. So customer service was really high up there on my list. Um, and it was something that we took so serious that we started greeting every customer by name. We had the capabilities of doing that. We greeted every customer by name, so our customers knew they were more than just a number to us, and our employees knew that they were more than just another number. They were part of the family. We depended on our customers every single day, so customer service was way high. Safety, safety was something that we developed. We never stopped developing safety. We took it so far that we took a ladder safety class, how to properly climb a ladder. Because just like everybody else, we had a guy fall off a ladder. So, and it was a knee jerk reaction, but it was a requirement that we had to do. And we felt it was necessary for the safety of our employees to learn how to place a ladder against a wall and climb up it. And people gave me grief about it, but you know what? I can pretty much guarantee you that every employee to this very day still remembers that class and the calculation to put a ladder against the wall.
I didn't even know there was a calculation.
There is a calculation for how tall the ladder is versus how many steps and how far the wall is out from the ladder.
Really? All
Yep.
right. See that I learned well, I've learned a few things already, but that is something I wasn't expecting to learn about today, that
Yep.
there is a calculation on there. finding topics, I think sometimes for our entrepreneurs are very busy. They have a million things going on. And it's hard for them to think about here's something that they can work on that will make them better, a better person, more engaged, happier with themselves, and so on and so forth, if it's not tied to a specific thing. So I think it's great to have some idea joggers like you just mentioned about safety and customer service. And there's just so many things that they can be looking at. And a
Yeah, I
lot
used to
of
drive to work with no radio on just so I could think of those topics.
you drove without a radio on.
Yep. Yep.
Okay. I don't even know if I can.
Yep.
I'm like zoning out here for a minute, trying to imagine how long I could go in a car without a radio. Can't do it. Can't do
That's
it.
my quiet windshield time.
I have to have like some kind of noise. I actually can't concentrate, believe it or not, if it's too quiet. For me to
Oh,
think, I
wow.
have to have other, I think that's part of that, whatever ADHD or whatever they say now it is. I don't know what it was. But when I was younger, I just was hyper. I think they used to call it hyper. Now
Yeah.
it's got all these titles, but I
Yes.
have to actually have noise or I can't think. That's so cool. So you would say do it. So you know what I'm doing now when I'm driving it? Because I always have the radio on. If I'm trying to find an address or something, I turn down the radio because somehow in my head, the lower volume, is that not the most ridiculous thing?
It's so you can concentrate. That's the excuse I use. Is so you
Is
can
that, do
concentrate.
you think it really helps to turn down the
No, it
radio?
doesn't. I'm
Yeah.
lost all the time anyways.
I don't know what I would do without the GPS. I just don't
Yes.
know. And, I always think about that with business and like developing people. If the GPS tells me where to go and it gives me every step. And I love that feature of like the overview and turn by turn because I want to read it first before I go. I want to see here's what's kind of coming up. And then I'm much more comfortable going, even though it tells me where to go. I want to know sort of what's happening. And if we could run our business like that and deal with our people like that, wouldn't it be wonderful if all your internal customers kind of knew what's next, what road will be on next, how long it'd take them to get there?
You talk about transparency. That's a transparency tool right there. Is having a roadmap saying, okay, week one, this is what you're going to do. Week two, this is what you're going to do. Week three, this is what you're going to do, and have it laid out all the way to the time they retire from you. And that's the key is transparency and having that roadmap and having those topics. So every week, not only does it help the employee, it helps you as the owner to stay on track or the trainer to stay on track to keep to make sure that everybody gets trained properly.
Yeah, because it's easy when you're busy. Listen, nobody's perfect. And it is very easy when you're an entrepreneur and running a business, owning a business, to try to keep track of everything everywhere. And if you're trying to remember all that, it's not going to happen. So have a
No.
roadmap, have those things written down, and then you have accountability on both sides that will kind of keep you on path because or else it's so easy to get sidetracked. The detours are just crazy.
Yeah, I used to have, when I first started in 98, I used to have a little notepad that I kept in my back pocket. And I think you and I've talked about this.
Yeah.
Then I migrated to the Palm Pilot and then it went to the iPhone and I wrote everything down and it was important that I wrote stuff down because like you said, when you're that busy, you're dealing with all these customers, all these internal customers, all your external customers, all your problems that you have throughout the day that you're battling with. And then you have that aha moment. You want to be able to write it down so you remember it, so you can go back later on, dissect it and say, was it an aha moment or was it just a spur of the moment thought? And a lot of my best ideas came from in the shower. I was singing along, yeah, yeah, yeah. And then I'm like, oh, hey, that's a great idea. So, and Siri has helped me along the way too. So I didn't have to get out the shower with wet hands and try to type it. So yeah, it's important that you write stuff down.
I think I might have shared on here a couple weeks ago. I just saw, I keep a little recorder, next to my bed. And now I use a lot of times Siri, but for years, because I would wake up in the middle of the night with something that was just so brilliant. And then I would fall asleep. And next morning I wake up and say, oh, I had a great idea and I forgot it was, or you'd be driving or whatever. And so trying again to think that you're going to remember by the time you get back an hour later to wherever you're going, just talking to Siri or recorder, whatever you have. But somebody I spoke to is using a dry erase marker in their shower, which I think is the most brilliant thing ever, because
that is.
Yeah.
I've got to write that down, because my wife's going to come home and see a dry erase marker in the shower and probably be freaking out. But that is a phenomenal idea.
How smart is that? And, there's all kinds of studies. I mean, I could pull out numbers all day and stats, but about that, your brain, for things to really sink in, to connect, that make that full connection, is you have to write it down. It's not typing it in a computer doesn't have the same effect. Talking it into a voice doesn't, but actually writing it down. So I thought, wow, that takes care of two things. One, they're not forgetting. And two, that reinforcement by writing it.
Over the years, you learn that there's different ways of learning. People read they read to learn. Some people, have to write it to learn it. Some people have to do it to learn it. And, especially when you're developing people, that's important to take in consideration, because some people can take verbal commands very well. Other people, they need you to stand behind them and walk through it, but they have to do it themselves. So taking in consideration the type of learner that they are is important.
That is excellent advice. And too many times I think we try a one size fits all approach, and that doesn't work at any time. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. So
Thanks
everybody's takeaways, go and listen to Meatloaf, Paradise by the Dashboard Light, if you haven't in a while, and think about making decisions and saying things that you may not be able to back up or may not want to back up.
Yep.
Watch Rudy if you haven't.
Rudy.
If you haven't ever seen it or haven't seen it in a while, and you can even post pictures of your ugly cry if you want to. I might do that. I might post an ugly cry, Rudy photo. And it usually comes out around this time of year. So all those feel good movies for the holidays. And it's so important to develop your people. Please have a plan and a real course of action if you want to keep them, and don't shortchange them by not doing that. So Chuck, always a pleasure.
Thanks for having me, Kim.
Do you want to hook up with Chuck? His links will be in the comments as always. And if you have any questions for me, or if you want to dare to disagree about Rudy, then you put it in there and we will have a discussion. And then
we will.
Chuck, go get your dry erase marker. And I just made myself a note, because I'm going to put one in my shower right now, because it was such a good idea. And I kept wanting to put one in there and I forgot because I didn't write it down. So there's that. All right, everybody, stay safe, make good choices, stay inspired, and we will be back next week. Bye.
Bye.